Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays Today podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunswick, and today we have on Dr. Liz Lyster, OB-GYN, and we are talking about hormones around perimenopause and menopause. And I feel like this topic has been like stalking me for a couple months. Like, I would really love to hear. Hopefully, this is just a topic that is actually getting a lot of conversation right now. Otherwise, it's like I'm turning 38 and it's like that exercise where it's like, see how many elephants you can find in a day. Not like real elephants, people like fake elephants, like pictures of elephants, elephants on TV, stuff like that. And you're like, oh my gosh, elephants are everywhere. Once you pick, like, I'm going to get this car. And then you're like, everybody has this car. I don't want that car anymore. I'm not special. That might just be my wing four that has that. Anyways, so perimenopause and menopause, like, it's, like, everywhere, right? Right? It's not just because I'm 38 and the algorithm is like, "Girl, it's happening. It's happening whether you want to or not." The other reason so I was just at continuing ed this past weekend, and there was a functional med nurse practitioner who was talking about perimenopause and menopause, um, and just a lot of the supplements that she recommends. I don't believe that Dr. Liz and I talked about Dutch tests in this episode. Trying to think about that. I don't think we did. But Dutch tests is a non-blood taking test that you could have your patients take if you were really interested in this way back, way, way back, like probably pre-episode 75. I had Dr. Beth Westy on the podcast, and she talked a lot about Dutch tests. And that was really cool. And back then I said, I'm going to get my hormones checked. Y'all, okay, so let's say that was pre-75. This is gonna be episode 280 something. It's been 200 episodes, which is about 4 whoa, that's crazy to think about. Okay, I have not gotten my hormones checked. And you go back and you'll hear little Lauryn, little 35-year-old or 34-year-old Lauryn being like, "I'm gonna get my hormones checked." She didn't. She did not. But what are you gonna do? Someday. I am gonna get them checked for sure. But this functional med doc was talking about this really interesting thing. So she put up on the screen and she had like an upside down triangle. And none of this is to take away from today's episode. Today's episode's cool, love it. But a lot of chiros, like, I don't think it's legal for us to be prescribing estrogen and stuff, right? I don't know. Maybe it's different based on state. Like, I don't Somebody message me if it's legal in your state, but I'm pretty sure that this is not in our scope of practice to be handing out sex hormones. But this functional med nurse put up like an upside down triangle. Okay. You can imagine that. Okay. And at the largest part of to the top of the triangle, so like the largest base part, she had adrenaline and insulin. Then the middle of the triangle was thyroid, and then the apex, like the very tip of the triangle, was sex hormones. And she talked about how she gets a lot of patients coming in wanting hormone replacement therapy, but she won't do hormone replacement therapy on them now unless they are addressing the top of the triangle first. So, like the adrenaline, the cortisol, the insulin resistance stuff. And so, I found that interesting. Like, right? Like, we can all agree that this is so classic. People want to jump to the like sexy end solution. But there's a lot of lifestyle stuff that we can be coaching our patients through if that's your jam. Like, if not, that's okay. I don't know what we're going to do in clinic. It kind of brings up an interesting topic that I wasn't really gonna talk to you guys about, but like you've seen that, like I brought in Shockwave to our clinic this year, but we really did it like sneaky. Um, I wasn't sure, like, that was the first prior to bringing on Shockwave, like, we're very straight chiropractic. We weren't always that way. I'm a Northwestern grad, okay? I did not start straight chiropractic, but from, like, year 5 to 12, um, maybe even 13, very straight chiropractic. Only adjustments, maybe we would sell, like, $500 of supplements a month, like, maybe. Maybe would do electric muscle stim on 1 or 2 patients a week if they, like, really I felt like they needed it. It was so little, I wasn't even charging for it because it was like, "Ugh, what's the 20 bucks gonna do?" Um, so, like, just things like that, and I feel like, you know, I feel like there's a boredom aspect. Like I could say like, "Oh, I know some of you are like, I just feel like we could be doing more for our patients." Sure. Absolutely. I think chiropractic does enough, to be honest. And I'm not saying you're wrong in your opinion of like we could be doing more. I think the adjustment does a ton. Where I am looking at bringing things in is from, yes, we could do more. And these like what are the things that I'm referring out for? And could we start to capitalize on that? So, pretty much any shoulder, elbow, knee, wrist, whatever, I'd be like, all right, go to physical therapy. And so that's where we're like, you know what? Maybe for those wellness patients that already get the big picture of nervous system chiropractic, maybe we can, instead of referring them out, maybe we can, profit and help them like through shockwave. And then that was cool. Like that was like this interesting, like, oh, I don't hate this. Like I was really nervous about bringing it on and what that was going to feel like. And I was like, actually, it feels really good. It feels really good to help with some of that. And so, we're just looking at like, would we wanna do Dutch tests in our clinic? Would we wanna do decompression? Like, I think it's coming from a place that, of bored. Like, honestly, if I'm, like, 100% honest with you, and I know that not all of you are gonna resonate with this, and that's okay. Like, I love whatever reason that you are a mixer or a straight or whatever you identify as within chiropractic, but, like, I just feel, you know, a while ago, somebody recommend said like the number one question they ask on a job interview is, "Are you the type of person who would like to come in every day and solve the same puzzle but get more efficient and faster at it? Or are you the type of person who would like to come in and solve a new puzzle every day?" And, when it's phrased that way, I mean, maybe this is just my mindset, but like it feels like the first is like a boring person, right? I don't know. No, you're like, "No, Lauren." For me, I'm like, "Oh my god, same puzzle every day," but they're getting faster and more efficient at it. After a while, it's just not doing much for me. And I think that there's a lot of chiropractors and professionals that feel that way, whether you're a dentist or a vet or a lawyer or a chiropractor or any other professional, even a teacher, a lot of a lot of your job is on repeat. Like there's a lot of monotony. And there are some people who don't have any issue with that. And then there are some that slowly kills their soul. Um, no, it doesn't slowly kill their soul, but it's part of the reason that they're feeling a little burnt out is they're just not feeling challenged in the way that their brain likes to feel challenged. And it's no judgment to like you're still feeling challenged, you're getting faster, efficient, more profitable, all these really exciting things, but some just need a different problem to solve. And I think that that's okay. I think that a lot of us fall into like a 5 or 7 year itch. I've seen coaches talk about how every 5 to 7 years you need to reinvent yourself to keep life interesting. And so, yeah, I think it's, with the like decompression, like why we're considering it. Well, because I can't lift heavy weights. Like this was just something that, like 6 years ago, it was probably like 2019. So, like 5 years ago, I started getting into lifting heavy weights at the gym and I liked it, but I would throw my back out. Like I literally threw my back out 5 times in a year. And when I say throw my back out, like, unable to adjust, like, for at least a week and a half, like, very bad spasms. Nothing ridiculous, nothing into my legs, but, like, terrible spasms. The final time before I was like, "Okay." Well, I went to a chiropractor who does a lot of, like, rehab stuff over in Minneapolis. She gave me some stuff, I did it, and I just kinda kept yeah, I don't know, I'm sure it wasn't her, it was just I don't know, I wasn't doing enough. But the final time I literally went into ER and had to get Flexerol because I couldn't even sit without moving. I couldn't lay and not move without 9 out of 10 spasms just hurting. So it was kind of this like, okay, I guess heavy lifting isn't for you. But I don't know, like do I need decompression? Would decompression allow me that? Like, I think I'm just getting more curious. I'm getting more, I don't know what I am, but I know that it really is nobody else's business. I mean, I'm telling you guys. So it's not like I'm like, don't stalk me or whatever. Anybody who's judging. I think if you're feeling like if you're in that role, in your business and you're like, "I don't know, I don't want anybody to think I'm selling out or this or that," because like I you guys know me as a pediatric chiro. So if I bring in decompression, like what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my identity as a chiro? And these are just the things that I think about. Um, and I think you guys think about it too. I think that's why we click. I'm pretty sure that's why we're friends. Anyways, we're talking about hormones today. So, Dr. Liz Lyster is an OB-GYN medical doctor, best-selling author and speaker, and an expert in perimenopause and menopause. In her men. We talk about men too. Don't worry. This is not just a female thing. I think it's called andropause. In her private practice in San Francisco, she helps women and men in there we go. Women and men in midlife and beyond lose weight, have more energy, increase their motivation and drive, and generally feel great. She graduated from Cornell University, went to med school at UC Irvine, and got her master's degree at UCLA in community health education. Ooh, girlfriend's got some resume. Dr. Liz walks her own talk. When she turned 50 a few years ago, she celebrated by climbing to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. Whoa. Dr. Liz has two awesome young sons and enjoys hiking and Argentine tango with her amazing husband. Damn, I don't have a desire to hike mountains like that. I don't know. Maybe I will when I get older. That's a weird thing. Like, sure, maybe I'll get that's just not on my agenda at this point. Now, I would love to go sit at like a luxury Marriott and look out at Mount Kilimanjaro. Where the heck is Mount? All right, I know it's in Africa, but like more specifically. Oh, good. My Google, because it was listening, knew exactly. Oh, y'all, it's beautiful. I can just picture, speaking of elephants, oh my gosh, the picture it's showing me is an elephant, like in flat terrain with Mount Kilimanjaro behind it. Yes, this has been added to my bucket list, not hiking it, but more like looking at it. Yeah. Viewing Mount Kilimanjaro just got added. Thank you, Dr. Liz Leister. All right, let's take a breath. Dear God, be with all the women and men who think they are going crazy because their hormones are whacked out. As we talk about the topic of aging, Lord, I know that you made us so perfectly designed. So help us find the balance through gently accepting what is nature and natural and what can optimize performance for performance. Um, be with those of us that think this is boring, but have patients coming to us and are seeking help. Help us if we want to stick within our lane of adjusting, help those. That's fine. Just be the conduit to like referring out our patients. We don't need to have all the answers, but our patients are looking to us to give them guidance and help them feel not crazy. Validating them is one of the greatest things that private practice docs do outside the hospital system, and just help us be there for patients and ourselves in our own journey. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, without further ado, here is Dr. Liz Leister, OB-GYN, on hormone replacement therapy. Enjoy. All right. Well, welcome to the She Slays the Day podcast. I am really excited to talk to you today, Dr. Liz, about menopause and perimenopause. I am 37. My mom, I don't really remember because like when she went through it, like I was a teen and I didn't give a real rip about what she was going through. But I'm like, I don't know, mom. But I'm pretty sure my mom started going through menopause in her late 30s. And I'm like, oh crap, is this a thing? So welcome. I'm excited to talk about this. Yeah. So why don't we start with how did you start? Because you're an OB-GYN. Did you like
Right.
start your profession knowing this was an area, or was it kind of one of those things that as you started to experience it, like how did you get into this topic?
It is a really interesting question because the short answer is no, I didn't go into OB-GYN thinking about perimenopause and menopause, but a few things did happen that fed my interest.
Okay.
So as a medical student, you rotate through the different specialties and you get to experience them and see patients in these different environments. So I was on my OBGYN rotation and I follow, so the student just follows the resident in like a quiet little mouse and sits in the corner and just observes. And what I watched is the doctor speaking with this woman who was in menopause and she was having all these symptoms and she wasn't feeling good. And by the end of the discussion, I don't even remember what the doctor did. Like, did she write a prescription? Did she give her something? But I just remember how much better this woman felt just from the conversation.
Okay.
It was like this
Because she felt
therapeutic benefit.
validated or
Yes,
because okay.
listened to, validated, and I absolutely loved that. It really was very appealing to me. Then I went through all my other rotations, and there were a lot of other things that I enjoyed about OBGYN. And over the last many 15 years or so, I've really, it's been a process of narrowing the focus.
Mhm.
So it's been stopping delivering babies. That was
Mhm.
kind of,
Which
that's
has to be
everybody's first
hard because,
step.
like, I would imagine most docs go into OB-GYN because they wanna deliver babies, I would assume, right?
It really varies. It really, like I said, for me, my favorite part was always the interaction. It was like delivering babies is absolutely incredible, especially the moment of delivery. Everything else was really irritating, to be perfectly honest. Like getting called in the middle of the night. Is it okay? I have a headache. Can I take a Tylenol? I mean, literally,
Well,
it would get to that. And
I think
I
that's
don't
why
mean to
we're
be
seeing,
mean,
like, planned
but
C-sections becoming more of a thing where it's like, "Can you just deliver your baby not on Thanksgiving, please?" Like, "Can we just do it at, like, 9 a.m.?"
right, I know. Yeah, yeah. So, but that was me. The person that I am, if I'm woken in the night, I'm toast.
Right, right.
I cannot just fall back to sleep. So that was me. So that was the first big step that I took. And then it was, I was still doing major surgeries in the hospital and then minor surgeries. So just narrow down to now I spend all of my time talking with mostly women. Men are about 10% of my practice, but the women are the other 90%. So it's a lot of fun. And I just love
Wait,
helping women feel better.
wait. Men are what percentage of your practice?
About 10% of
You're
practice.
gonna have to connect the dots for
There's
me
so,
because you're an OB-GYN. What
sure,
is it? I would have
absolutely. You're
thought
right. And this
okay,
was
but
an
you're in
issue.
California, so maybe this
You're
is
right.
that maybe I
No,
don't know. Like, what is
it's
your
not a,
answer here?
yeah, that's okay. I will tell you. I will
Okay.
tell you. So first of all, we all have hormones.
Yes.
Women, men,
Fact.
we have a lot in common. All right, we have important differences, but we also have a lot in common. And when I went to start to learn about bioidentical hormones, alternative holistic approaches to perimenopause and menopause, I would go to these conferences starting all coming up on 20 years ago, where I started going to these conferences. And of course, they talk about men as well. And
Mhm.
then I had women asking me to please, please, please help their husbands.
Mhm. Okay. That makes
A
sense. It's
lot,
the
not
hormone.
all, but most of the men in my practice were referred by women in their life, and they want to feel better too. And also, little bit of a insider secret is they're easier than we are. They're more straightforward.
Emotionally or, like, literally hormone-wise?
Well,
Why not both?
I'm talking more literally hormonal.
Okay. Got it. So I
Yeah.
really want to get into like the symptoms and some of the natural approaches and bioidentical hormones like well I don't know if that counts as a natural way. But first I kind of
Yes,
wanted
it
because
does.
you're in private practice and
Correct.
it sounds like what you really loved was like you said, you fell in love with this because of the validation of just that woman being heard. And so, and then when I'm reading your bio and things like that, it definitely seems like you recognized kind of one of the steps in this process was you recognizing the lack of support in Western medicine. And like from an outsider and like talking to other OBs that have left the hospital system and gone into private practice, it really was kind of a following the money thing where it's like, well, you can't really bill insurance for like, it's that push towards like, well, birth is where the money comes
That's right.
from, surgery is where the money come from. And so like, talk to me about that lack of support in that like our traditional Western model. And is that why you decided to go into private practice?
I have been in different uh, environments, different, I've worked out of hospitals, worked for as an employee. There was a stretch of time where I did have my own practice and I billed insurance. This was a while ago because I couldn't do it. I couldn't see enough patients to cover the rent and my staff and all the things that I needed to cover. Because unfortunately, that's the model that we have right now is doctors are super pressed for time. Well, but what happened was I actually, after I closed down my own practice, I went to work for another doctor and he did not bill insurance. So that allowed me to kind of get used to that environment,
Do you feel
right?
like that was
Because
a
I want people to be
mindset
able to
switch
use
for
their
you?
insurance.
Yeah, because like a
Absolutely,
lot
big
of our
time,
audience is
big
chiropractors,
time.
and they have this like, well, I want people to be able to use their insurance, but insurance is not allowing them to pay for,
That's
their
right.
employees.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or allowing them to spend the time they want to spend. I spend minimum 45 minutes with my patients. That's a follow up. When they're new, they're with us for an hour and a half, couple of hours. We are just really taking our time. I'm not rushed. There's nobody telling me how much time I can spend with my patients or what tests I can order. So it's really, it took a little while for that mindset shift, but now I see it completely from the side of I actually help people feel better as opposed to most of my patients have tried with regular doctors on their insurance. And unfortunately, there's gaslighting that happens where they're told, oh, you're just getting older, or you just have to live with feeling more tired or gaining weight or whatever's happening. It must be your fault, or there's nothing that anyone can do, and they just look for better answers, and that's how people end up where I get to speak with them and actually help them feel better and achieve their goals. So it's very gratifying, but it what I do can't be done, and all the time I spend explaining
Right.
results and
It
going
doesn't
talking
work
about different
in
options.
the
It
hospital system.
yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of what
yeah,
I
yeah,
expected. Um,
exactly.
do you feel like there have been quality conversations around like, is this an age thing as far as, like, the doctor? So, like, I think back to, like, picturing what an OB-GYN conversation might look like in the '90s, with a doc, male or female doc, but, like, 45-year-old female. Like, was everybody being told, like, this is just part of it, and now we're going, "Actually, no, we understand because we understood hormones back then." Like, where do you think the
Right,
gaslighting
right.
kind of like it stopped being so much gaslighting?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. Let me think about that. One thing that's really interesting, you're leading me to think about this. So let's see if this is what you're asking about. So I was in my residency in the early 90s. I became a doctor in 1990, so I'm in my residency. And at this point in time, we are lamenting that more women are not taking hormones. They're suffering with menopausal symptoms, and we need to get more women on hormones. And then in 2002, so now I've been in practice a few years. I've got my little kids at this point. So I'm in a totally different phase, and I've been going to continuous learning about hormones and that sort of thing. And we get the Women's Health Initiative study that starts to publish results. So 2002, more than 20 years ago. And that study, which was honestly really a terrible study. Okay, so I'm thinking of your audience in particular to feel reassured and not be afraid. that using the right kinds of hormone replenishment to feel better does not only does it not increase risk of bad things like cancer, but it actually can decrease the risk of cancer. Right? So we know these things now, but we've had the last 20 years under the dark shadow of that one
What did
study.
this study say? I
Okay,
was a
this
sophomore in high school
study,
in 2002, so I wasn't up in
right?
my research
All
yet.
right. I'll tell you really briefly. So it was called the Women's Health Initiative Study, the WHI, and it had tens of thousands of women in the study. So a big study, and it was initiated by the company that made, they still make, a particular kind of estrogen and a particular progestin. So those are the two main female hormones, is estrogen and progesterone. Okay, but that's not what they were using in the study. They gave women estrogen called Premarin, which is from pregnant mare's urine. It's literally a horse estrogen, and they were giving it to women as oral tablets. Okay, so I'm kind of putting a pin in that because we now know that estrogen through the skin, like a patch or a cream, is way better than oral estrogen.
Okay.
So that's number one. And then the make progestin. We make progesterone. So it's an alteration in that molecule so that they could make a drug that women would use as their hormone treatment in menopause. Okay. So, a couple of conclusions. What happened was there was an arm of the study. The women were either being given that combination of the oral estrogen and the not human progestin, and then, or they were given a sugar pill. And in the women getting the hormone combination, there was they observed an increase in the cases of breast cancer in that group of women. So what they did is they stopped the study.
Oh,
That's okay. That's the right thing to do. It was an abundance of caution. They didn't prove that it was causing it, but they observed that. So they said, no, we got to stop this arm of the study. So they did. They stopped that part. But there was a whole other arm of the study where the women were only being given the estrogen, right? So if a woman has a hysterectomy and she doesn't have her uterus anymore, the the going wisdom at that time was that she only needs estrogen. She doesn't need the progestin. So this whole other group of thousands of women were either given the estrogen or the sugar pill. And the women given the estrogen had a lower percentage of breast cancer.
okay.
Okay, and that never even barely made the news. It was about 2 years later when that data came out from that part of the study that had continued.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, basically, it's just a huge, huge bummer and disservice to women. All the conclusions that were drawn out of that study
So
were
did we
because,
yeah, did we conclude as a
eh,
society that, like, hormone replacement therapy is bad, but it really
correct, that's
okay,
exactly what happened.
okay.
Yep, that it causes breast cancer and that it's bad and that women shouldn't take it.
Can I ask a, like, weird
So then
side
what we've
note? And this is
had,
a hell of a tangent. Like, birth control is, like, kind of included in that too, or no?
okay, that's a good question because you're absolutely right. Birth control pills contain
Or
estrogen and you're taking the pill by mouth.
right.
Okay. So this is really good. And this is pretty high level for your audience, but let's talk about it for a minute because I talk about this all the time. I speak to groups, women, is I talk about the difference between relative risk and absolute risk. And this is so important to not being scared by the headlines. Okay. So, for example, we know that birth control pills increase the risk of blood clots. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
It's kind of out there. They talk about it with women when they start them on pills. Okay. Well, that's a relative increase, but let me give you the absolute risk. The numbers are, instead of 2 out of 100,000 women, it goes up to maybe 4 out of 100,000 women. So that's double the risk.
So yeah, so I mean, it is a
But the
case where you
numbers
can
are
make like,
still
yeah.
so tiny.
Mhm. Okay.
Yes, it is. And people do. And they sure do. So that's what happened is they saw what they called a 26% increase in the risk of breast cancer in that study. Well, the numbers were so first of all, like I'm just saying, is it's not zero for women who don't use these, right? Like don't use a birth control pill or don't use any hormone replenishment. It, we're complicated as human beings. So these risks aren't zero. Okay. But when the absolute numbers in that study, that 26% risk, which sounds like a significant increase, was an additional 4 women out of 10,000. Okay, so tiny, tiny numbers. And then the last really important point, I could talk all day about this, but the last really important part of that is that the women who were on the hormones, they did better on all kinds of counts, including their survival. So we call that mortality. So the mortality was loving the hormones for any reason. Like there was just a lower risk of dying. Even with those additional handful of women who got diagnosed with breast cancer, they
Mhm.
still did better. So
Interesting.
this is it's been a long 20 years of debunking this one study. So there's this whole generation of doctors that unfortunately are not under the right information with that. So birth
So
control
then is
pills
their
have the
answer then those
cardiovascular.
doctors, yeah, so then do those doctors you're
Yeah.
saying, like, so they saw this study in 2002, and now because they're holding on to the fact that hormone replacement therapy is dangerous, their answer to women when they come in is, "You're just gonna have to deal with it?" Is that kinda what you're saying? Is,
Yes.
like, instead
Yes.
of saying,
Yep.
"Hey, let's
That's
get some
exactly.
hormone levels and see what we can do as far
Yeah.
as that," they're just going like, "Ah, it's too dangerous to do that, so
Right.
do that."
Right. Yeah. Because they're just learning these conclusions and then they're passing them on without actually going back like I have done so many times. There's some good references out there. I mean, there's just abundant data now that just shows that women really, really, really don't have to be afraid to use hormones to replenish because our hormone levels go down as we get older. All right. And so sometimes we just will feel better by doing some replenishment. We don't have to do high doses of these hormones, but we can do some replenishing to help women feel better and sleep. And we can talk more about that because
Yeah,
that's my whole goal
so when
is that women feel good.
does the hormones start to come down in general? Like, when do we start to see things coming down? Which hormones are coming down, and what kind of symptoms do we see with this? This would be like perimenopause, right? Is this what we call it?
Yes, exactly, exactly. Okay, in so I'm seeing this younger and younger, but I'm still going to say what we have observed for most women
Yeah.
is that in our 30s, the first hormone that starts to decline is progesterone. And progesterone calms the brain and helps with sleep. So sometimes women can experience disrupted sleep, harder to fall asleep, harder to stay asleep. Okay. And then in our 40s, the estrogen production can get a little wonky.
Okay.
It can be a little higher, it can be a little lower, and that
Oh, it
affects
can
our
be higher
mood, it
or
affects
lower.
our cycle. Correct. And then average age of going into menopause is age 51. You mentioned your mom really was a lot younger. That's because perimenopause can be 10 or more years before that last period. Menopause is 12 months without a period, or if a woman has her ovaries removed, then she's surgically put into menopause.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's menopause, but then perimenopause can be years before that. So sleep disruption, mood changes, cycle gets irregular, weight gain, blood sugar challenges, those go together. Adrenals can get stressed out. We have to think about all the other things that are happening when we're in our 30s and our 40s as well,
Well, I know, I'm,
right? A
like,
lot of
thinking
women like
about
career and family.
yeah, these symptoms are like, well, is it perimenopause or is it you own 5 businesses? But there's a test for that. Like, right? You is that what you would do for someone who comes
Er,
in and being like, "Okay, are is the mood changes because you need a vacation or because you're in perimenopause?" So you would just test progesterone and estrogen?
To start,
Okay.
I do a very thorough panel. So the very first thing I do is a really thorough history.
Mhm.
Okay, I talked with a patient this week. She's like, "Your history form's really long," and nobody had said that in a while. So I was like, "Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I'm not going to shorten it, but okay." But I really like lots and lots of questions, a lot of things going on of what's happening in your life. Super. That's point number one.
Yeah.
Number two is a really detailed panel of labs. Yes, for sure. Estrogen, progesterone. There's a test called FSH,
Mhm.
follicle stimulating hormone. That's the brain hormone that initiates the whole
I
cycle
remember
and
that.
easy. Yay. All right. See, super easy to check. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors will say, oh, well, you're having your cycle, so it can't be your hormones. And that's completely not true.
Okay.
So that's where women have to advocate for themselves.
Does
Okay.
FSH go down, up, or is it like estrogen where it could do either? It goes
Like
up
up,
and
down,
down.
up, down. I call it the stock market phase because it looks like that. Up, down, up, down. So it can fluctuate. It can fluctuate. So we don't really call it menopause until a whole year without the period and the FSH is checked 2 times and stays high both times. But
Okay, so
I have
FSH
patients,
stays high as we're going.
eventually it goes up and stays up. That's
And
exactly
what is
right.
FSH
Yes.
responsible for?
It stimulates the ovaries,
Okay.
okay, to make the follicle, which then that's the first part of the cycle. Then if pregnancy occurs, then it goes in one direction. But if pregnancy does not occur, then after the ovulation, there's a little bit of progesterone that is produced, and but then that drops off.
Okay. And does
Okay,
FSH have its
and
own
then the
set of like
period.
symptoms of like, ah, well, that's, you got a dry vagina or something, and that's totally the FSH, or like is its own type of symptoms that go with it, or are they all so intermingled that it's really hard to
It's that. It's really more, they're all interconnected. It's really cool. I absolutely love it. I can nerd out all day on the things that happen with a woman and her hormones and the cycle. So the FSH starts out really low. And we'll talk about the ovarian cycle, okay? Because not all women have a period, okay? But the ovaries, if they have their ovary, then it usually goes through this cycle. And so at the very beginning, the FSH should be low. Then it increases, and then that stimulates. So follicle stimulating
Mhm.
hormone stimulates the ovary to release that egg, and it'll have a spike in the middle. So lots of fertility treatments are connected to FSH, either stimulating more production of FSH or imitating the spike. Okay, so that's a lot more, a lot of detail related to that. And so the symptoms really relate to what's happening overall in the balance between the hormones. So there's estrogen that goes up in the first part of that cycle. Then in the second part, progesterone should be there, but then it drops off, and that's when she's going to have her period. And that's when women experience PMS.
Okay.
PMS, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. That's that drop off in all the hormones. Okay. And then we also have testosterone. We women, a lot of people don't even realize that women have testosterone. We do. We don't, men have like 20 times as much as we do or more, but our testosterone level is pretty steady throughout that whole month. So when those other hormones fall below, that's when we might be irritable or a little cranky and We talk about PMSE.
Mhm.
That's what's happening, is how they are in relation to each other.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. What does testosterone do through, like, the 30s and 40s in general? Does it stay the
Okay,
same? Does it
yeah. And it declines.
it
It
declines?
declines, and it's nice and it's a steady decline. And this also happens to men. So for us women, our hormone changes as we get older are more noticeable. And so hopefully we will advocate for ourselves and pay attention and get what we need to feel better. But for the guys, it's very gradual. So sometimes they don't notice it until somebody else tells them, hey, like pokes them on the shoulder, like, dude, you're super cranky. What's you should get checked.
So
Okay. So
crankiness,
testosterone
moodiness is
does,
a testosterone thing too?
that is correct. That is correct. Let me tell you the things that testosterone
Yeah.
helps with. So you then like have not having enough would cause
Right.
these issues. So testosterone helps with mood. It's kind of like a stabilizer. I really think it's the main reason that men look at us women and they're like,
You need to
what?
chill, girl.
Yes, exactly. Kind of like a chill hormone.
Right.
Okay, like a stabilizer, helps with muscle building, helps with, which then helps with metabolism and managing our weight. It helps with libido, sex drive. Okay, for us women, again, we're very complex. We have a lot of factors that feed into helping us with our libido. So testosterone is only one ingredient. We have to feel safe. We have to like who we're with. We have to get enough sleep. We have to not have too much outer stress going on. Lots of variables for us, but testosterone can help with that. Let's see. It helps with breast health. It helps with bone strength because it's helping with muscle. So all of these benefits
Do you
prop each
think
other up.
do you think that because I'm assuming we were not giving testosterone or, like, addressing hormones like this in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and, and we have all these women now who are I mean, I feel like in the beginning of my career, I saw a lot more osteoporosis as, like, a thing. Like, do you think that as we start to take care of the women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s better with hormone therapy, that we might see some, like, less of some of those types of things?
I do. I definitely think that, first of all, my goal is always women feeling good in her own life. That's like my top goal. But I absolutely think you are right. I think that, well, first of all, like I said, the data shows that hormones lower the risk of breast cancer. So if we can get that word out,
I mean, yeah,
uh,
breast cancer it's through the roof, but I mean, there's multiple factors to that.
that's right. There absolutely are. And so we really want to be proactive and address how we're feeling as we go. And for example, you mentioned osteoporosis and bone density. The US Preventive Services Task Force doesn't recommend a bone density scan until a woman is 65 years old. I think that's nuts. I want women to get a baseline scan by age 50.
Right. And they did
Okay,
just lower
at
the
the
mammogram
latest.
thing though down to like 40, right?
They
And
did. And I
every
am
year.
a correct. Yes, I am a supporter of mammograms. I live in a kind of between worlds in the medical world. My parents are both retired doctors. And so I grew up in the regular medical world, kind of over here. And then over here is the more holistic preventive approach. And I'm definitely more over to this side. However,
That's why you
I live
agreed to
with,
be on this podcast.
I'm delighted. I'm super delighted to be here. Just again, I'm getting the word out that women can feel good
Mhm.
and not be afraid of these ways to. Again, I'm not talking about like the full on that side of the spectrum is like the anti-aging doctors who are doing like high doses of all of the hormones. That's not me either, but I'm on this side because I'm aware. Again, I went into menopause when I was 43,
Mhm. Like
so
into
I've
menopause or you
been
started
into
perimenopause?
menopause, in
Wow.
all the way into menopause. I was writing my first book and I was talking about getting your labs checked, and I thought, huh, I should check my labs. And the FSH level should really, in a woman who's not in menopause or perimenopause, at the beginning of her cycle, the FSH should definitely be below 10,
Okay.
a level of 10, and mine was 54.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. Glad I checked. Okay,
Okay.
so that was really way up there.
So we've talked about some of the symptoms. When you have a woman come and work with you, we'll kind of stick with women just to keep it not
Yeah, sure,
too all over. What
sure.
are some of the things that like I want to get to like yes, like cuz like the pellets and like this, I want to understand that. But like first like are there things outside of hormone replacement therapy that you start to talk about like okay, yeah, these are general health principles, but like these are really important now that you are very much in perimenopause on the brink of menopause.
Yeah, beautiful. That's so critical. Number one is sleep. Sleep, protecting your sleep. There's also what we call sleep hygiene,
Mhm.
which means putting the screens away, having a winding down
I thought
routine
you
for
were gonna just say
yourself.
wine. Having a
So
wine,
wine,
yes, a glass of
wine.
wine.
I'll be careful how I pronounce winding down.
Damn
Okay,
it.
so yes, okay, that's kind of interesting because on the one hand, while it's can be lovely to wind down with a drink, uh, for a lot of people, alcohol can disrupt sleep. So that's very individual. People really need to see what's working for them. But it's just that important to do for each person to do what you need to do to protect your sleep. Okay. Because alcohol, in particular, when the level of alcohol is rising in our blood, the brain experiences that as a sedative, like it does that calming. But then if we go to sleep and the blood level is dropping, right? Our body's metabolizing the
Mhm.
alcohol and our level is dropping, that's a stimulant effect in the brain.
Okay.
And so that's why for some people not drinking is a really important
Yeah.
part of sleep hygiene. And moderating alcohol intake, our dietary changes, our dietary needs change as we get older.
Okay.
Okay, so that definitely happened when I was in my 40s, and then now I've
Well,
been in
can
my
yeah, what
50s.
kind of dietary changes are you talking
Okay,
about?
okay, so metabolism and diet. So first of all, it's so important. I'm kind of on a kick about this lately with every single patient that I talk to, plus all my friends, like everybody, and now I'm talking to you, is focusing on protein intake.
Yeah, this
It's
is a
it's
buzzword lately. I didn't
it
know. It's
is,
always funny
and
where,
it's
like, with
so
social
important.
media, where you're like, is the rest of the world talking about this as much as my algorithm? You're like,
Right.
everybody is talking about
Well,
protein.
I will tell you that I'm also teaming up with a therapeutic nutritionist, and she's an expert in women in their 40s and 50s and better in terms of food and exercise to build strength and stamina and protect our bones. So I am talking about metabolism and weight, but I'm also talking about body composition.
Mhm.
All right. So that shifts and changes.
Like,
That
increasing your muscles mass. Yes?
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly. We want to focus on muscle. We have to have resistance training. I've been an aerobics girl all my life. I was I'm an 80s girl, so
Mhm.
with the leg warmers, like
The
if you've seen
Jane
anyone
Fonda.
dress up,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
that was me. I was all in with that. And that's really marketed to women and it's really fun. And kind of unfortunately for me, as a woman, I'm going to be 60 next year. I need to start doing more with lifting weight,
Mhm.
heavier weight. So I'm being coached, I'm being advised. And so that's a difference in me at my age that I need to honor it so that I
Mhm.
can stay healthy and strong for as long as possible.
Yeah, I've seen a lot with, protein and then also creatine, like, just
Correct.
being
That's
just a
correct.
huge thing.
Yeah. Yes.
So, like, how much protein should Like, does it dependent on size, or is there, like, kind of a standard amount that you should be taking in
Yes,
your 40s?
it it is dependent on how much I weigh at any given moment. So how much does a person weigh, and also how active she is.
Okay.
Okay. So there's some good things online. There's some calculators. I'm starting to bring all that information together with what I put out on social media and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. But it does depend on all of that. So middle in terms of activity and average size woman is going to be somewhere usually around 2 grams of protein per kilogram of
Okay.
our body weight.
That's a
So
lot.
there's 2.2 pounds in a kilo. Yeah, it really is.
That's a
It
lot.
really is a lot. And yeah, you have to
And the
focus
average
to
person
get
too,
that
like,
much.
I think every chiro on
Yeah.
here who's, like, talked about, like, let's say, like, maybe reducing dairy would help, and people are like, "Oh, I don't really do that." Or, you talk to them about protein, and they're like, "Oh, I get plenty of protein." And the next question is like, "What'd you have for breakfast this morning?" And they're like, "Coffee, um, and a hard-boiled egg." And I go, "You wanna know how much protein's in a hard-boiled egg?" I'm like, "Isn't it like" I can't remember whether it's
It's
like
like
6 or 10, 6,
7.
6, yeah,
Look, 7. The last time I
yeah.
looked, it was 7.
Yep,
I know.
in a hard-boiled egg.
I
I'm like,
I
"Great."
know.
So you're 7
Yeah,
grams in, we're shooting for, like, 30 to 40 in a meal, and they're like, "Oh." And so it's just, like, that funny exercise where when you actually have someone start tracking, like, "Let's see how
exactly.
much you're actually consuming." Like, "Okay, you had a chicken breast. Wonderful. You're at 30."
Yeah,
Keep going.
exactly. Absolutely. And yeah, you're exactly right. It's surprising. I actually had that kind of exactly that conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and she was shocked that there was that little protein in an egg. She really
It's
thought she was
I feel
doing good.
I feel like basically if you're not having to, like, pack protein into your day, you're not getting it. Like, if you're
Correct.
not like, "And then I'll have 2 chicken breasts with that," or, like, now, I'm intentionally between lunch and dinner, I am making sure I have, like, a 30-gram protein thing that I really like, and it's like, "Okay, I have to do that." It's not like, am I in the mood for that? I feel like it used to be like, "Oh, I'm not really hungry. I don't need my afternoon snack." And it's like, "It doesn't matter.
Right.
Get your protein." So I
That's
feel a little like
exactly
a dude.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
know, right?
s yeah.
And another interesting part that so this nutritionist I'm working with, her name is Anna, and she's so gifted. She has so much wisdom to impart. I'm very excited doing more projects and work with her. But she the one of the most recent things she said to me, which was super fascinating and totally maps onto my experience as a woman, is that, and you just made me think of this, talking about the guys and like steaks for breakfast, like eat the protein, like it feels good, they enjoy it. For us our female physiology, we actually feel better. It's like a brain thing with carbs and fats.
Shit. So it's like our brain is working
I
against
know.
us.
I know, but it's okay. It's okay. As you already know, the more protein, like you said, it just has to be like a conscious part of the daily plan to
Mhm.
get enough. But also, we have to have our carbs. So when women try to go low carb, and then of course, low fat's a total disaster. And as far as
Right.
I'm concerned, I've been around since the early 80s when the low fat
Oh,
started,
yeah.
and I read the Zone diet book, which was one of the OG early books in this realm. And he was like, "No, you have to eat your fat." I'm like, "He's right. You're good. You have to do that." So the low fat, as far as I'm concerned, was the beginning of the obesity epidemic. It was people trying to cut out fats. Those 100-calorie things that had
Yeah,
like
oh god,
zero
I
fat,
had
but
those. Yep.
pure junk. Yeah,
Mm.
I know. I was there to watch that whole thing, and not to mention portion sizes.
Yeah.
We're kind of, like you said, venturing away from, my expertise is the hormone part, which I
Yeah.
absolutely love, and I stay with that
Right.
when I'm working with people. But all of this is important and relevant.
Yeah. Well, we
I
were kinda
remember when.
talking about, like, what are some of the, like, precursors to hormone, so we talked about, like, sleep,
Yeah,
protein,
yep,
weightlifting.
wait, yep.
Okay.
Yes, let's see. So, stress management, okay, there's
Mm.
that famous phrase. The way, though, that stress impacts our health is through our adrenals primarily. Our adrenals, that's the cortisol.
Mhm.
So, you can hear and read about cortisol leading to weight gain. However, a lot of times we as women, we put ourselves really low on our to-do list, right? Like we make fun of the guys. They get a sniffle and they take the day off of work. And
Right.
so what I like to say to women is maybe we should consider taking a page out of their book and having a lower threshold for taking care of ourselves. Okay. So what we tend to do instead is we muscle through. We're tired, but we got to do stuff. Kids, work, whatever we're up to in life. We don't have, it's not optional. So we muscle through and then the adrenals get really tired out. So a lot of times by the time women get to me, especially if they're in their, let's say they get all the way into their 50s and they've just been muscling through for years now and not their sleep hasn't been great and they're really lots of things have piled up. At that point, their cortisol might not be high anymore. It might be low.
Oh.
All
Oh,
right.
and
So
are they
that's
skinny
where,
then?
yeah, no, that's the
Damn.
problem.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, it's high cortisol is the
I
problem."
know,
Oh, it just needs to be a
right? But
balance.
they don't, they're stuck with the other issues, but their adrenals went all the way into fatigue.
Okay.
Okay. So that can be a problem. So stress management, and that, of course, that's super individual.
Mhm.
Again, I always harp on sleep.
Yeah,
All right. Our adrenals, our body does so much cleanup at night while we're
while we're
sleeping
sleeping.
and stress management, cortisol production. So sometimes women with disrupted sleep are, it's the cortisol that's disrupted. And
Yeah.
then that throws off thyroid. And then we're toast from
Oh,
a
yeah.
metabolic standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make
Yep.
sure we talk
This
about
beautiful,
this is
holistic.
complicated, we'll just solve it in an hour. Um,
I know.
so talk to me about the type of hormone replace like, are there types? Okay, because you keep referring to this as holistic. So is
Yes.
this different? So if I came to you and we did a panel and you put me on some hormones, would this likely be different than if I just went to Joe Schmo OB-GYN and they're like, "Yeah, let's put you on hormones."
Okay. The answer is yes.
Okay.
There are a few bullet points that I'll do for us
Okay.
for this. So, first of all, like we mentioned, progesterone is the first one to drop off and affects anxiety. When we have enough progesterone, it helps, calms the brain, helps with anxiety, helps with sleep. And there are lots of ways. There's even over the counter progesterone
Hmm.
that is,
Can I just go
I'm
start
going to
taking
use the
that?
word
You want me to get it measured?
bioidentical. You can. You can. I really, I of course have, I like to have the data. I like to have
Yeah.
the baseline measurements of everything,
Sounds smart.
right? But women definitely can do that. Okay. So that can really be helpful. The bioidentical progesterone. When estrogen starts to fluctuate, that gets a little trickier because again, we're going through that
Could be
up, down
up, could
stock
be
market
low.
phase.
Yep.
And I have a patient just this week that I talked with her about that. Like she's just starting that part. So she's already, we have her using progesterone, not that progestin that we talked about a while
Yeah, we don't want
ago
that shit.
that
Not
they
that.
used in that study. That's the one we don't want. Okay. So, and then when we get to where estrogen is going to be helpful, like she's just barely starting to have some hot flashes. So, what we're doing is a topical estrogen. So, estrogen needs to go through the skin. It can be patches, which are available from regular pharmacies. There's a gel that you can get from a regular pharmacy. And then there's also compounding pharmacies, which, contrary to popular belief, are well regulated.
I
The
didn't
regular
I'm not up
pharmaceutical
on my
industry likes,
pharmaceutical regulation.
no problem. That's okay. You don't need to be. But what's important is that there's a whole pharmaceutical industry that likes to imply that compounding pharmacies aren't well regulated. That's not true. They're well regulated. It's just different. It's not
Yeah.
the same Food and Drug Administration. So
Yeah.
that's where women can get testosterone. So I've had quite a
Through a
number of women in their
compound.
30s.
Pharmacy.
Yeah, women
So
in
you
their
see, you're
30s
talking enough
who
to a conspiracy
love the
theorist that I'm
testosterone.
like, if the FDA is like throwing shade at compound pharmacies, I'm like, that's probably the direction I'm going.
Yeah, which is reasonable. It's very reasonable. And right now in the United States, we don't have a pharmaceutical option for testosterone for women. We used to. There used to be a testosterone, it was available like 15, 20 years ago, and it was combined with an oral estrogen. So we don't want
Oh,
that.
we don't want that.
Okay. Yeah. But the company just went out of business and nobody was harmed with that product.
Mhm,
But also, other countries have a testosterone patch.
and we don't have that?
We do not have that right now. So I love compounding pharmacies. I choose the ones that I work with where I know the pharmacist, I know the process. A lot of feedback with my patients, make sure that they're feeling better and getting what they need. But they do a lot of internal testing. So I'm very confident in the compounding pharmacies that I work with,
Right.
especially when I want to give a woman testosterone, because testosterone is really great.
So you kinda said, like, yes, obviously you prefer data, but, like, let's say I went to one of these countries and I'm like, "Hey, it's a testosterone patch. I wanna try it." And is that dangerous?
Probably not.
Okay.
It's probably
You're
completely
like, "I am
fine.
not advising you to do this, but I'm
I
just."
know, I know. No, you're making me think. I'm like, huh, I should go look. In Canada, I'm going to be in Canada next year. They have a testosterone patch. I don't know if I'd be able to just go get one. I mean, I believe it's still by prescription.
Okay. Alright. If I know a
I
guy,
think
I'm
I'm
just
pretty
saying.
sure. Right, I know, right? So
So then
I would absolutely try it. And too much of any of these hormones, women feel it. I like to do low doses and go up slowly, dial things
Mhm.
in. I'm not here just like throwing stuff at women.
Um, Once you go on I wanna talk about pellets, so make sure we come back to that, but, like, once
Hmm.
you go on, so is it kinda like, "And now you do this until you die?" 'Cause, like
Great. That's everyone's question. Every single person I work with has that question. It's a really important question. And I give a little bit of a long answer. The short answer is using hormones does not obligate you to use them forever.
right.
So I always like to start
Just
there.
as
For
long
women who
as you
are
want to
they're
avoid the
feeling
symptoms.
that is correct and the problems that we get without the hormones. So that's
Mhm.
absolutely true, which is why my personal answer to your question is yes, I will always use at least enough estrogen to help my bones.
Okay.
Always, always. I will always use at least that much. Higher doses help everything else. And I want to feel good. And I'm a newlywed. I've only been married 7 years. And I want to feel really good. And I want my intimate life with my husband. I want all of that. Okay. But that's not, I don't presume what a particular person wants for their life.
Mhm.
So that also informs it. But like if someone's she's having hormonal issues and she's afraid to use anything to feel better, that's when I really go in and I'm like, I just really want to reassure you that using these hormones for the right kinds of hormones, the bioidentical progesterone and the estrogen through the skin, just for now, just feel better. Because when we have enough estrogen, we're just nicer.
Mm, okay.
Okay.
My husband's gonna listen to this episode.
Testosterone
He's like,
helps
"Honey,
us.
I bought you some estrogen."
Which is possible because that's over the counter too. And what does that say to me? That just says to me that women want to feel better. We want to feel
Right.
good. And the market is going to reflect that. You know, doctors who get like all up in arms about it, I'm like, no, just help your patients.
Mhm.
Listen to
Mhm.
them, help them. But actually, I was a little bit surprised, but it's not that hard to get estrogen topical gels or creams these days as well. So that happens sometimes. People will do a lot on their own, and then finally they'll come to me and go,
I
I've been
should
doing this
probably
a
get some
while. And
levels. Yeah. Okay.
yes, that's
So
exactly what they say.
what are the pellets? I hear that word a lot.
Yes, hormone pellets. I love them. I actually happen to have a little show and tell. I can show you the pellets. Let me show these to you. So let's just see if I can. So can you see there's like a little pellet inside the
Yep.
package?
Yep.
So and this one's for a man. It's kind of big.
I was gonna
These
say that one
little
looks
tiny
big. Those one
ones,
are tiny.
these
Okay.
are tiny. These are
What are
the
you gonna do with
sizes.
those?
It's more like this for women. So hormone pellets. It's the first time I've been able to show these on podcasts. So yay. So this is what happens. And I love pellets, by the way. As I mentioned, I went into menopause when I was 43. Now I'm 59. So that's a lot of time that I've tried all these different things that we're talking about. And I've used pellets myself for about 9 years. Currently, I have a colleague. I do her pellets and she does mine. She's just a doctor in my area who
Swapsies.
we yeah, exactly. So we really like this method. So what happens is the pellets themselves are compressed hormone. That's it. They're made by a very specialized compounding pharmacy. There's a few. Not all compounding pharmacies make pellets. It's an office procedure. Okay, so I work mostly online, but if someone gets pellets, then they're the ones that I do my in-person days each month.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little office procedure, and I'm pointing to the upper glute area.
Okay.
That's usually like that fleshy part of our body is a good place for the pellets in the fat tissue there. And numb the skin, very tiny cut that doesn't even need a stitch.
Even for
Okay,
the
just
dudes, that
bandage,
one looked more like what
even
I'd
for the
pictured
men.
like a magnesium pill, like for those that
It's
are
not
just
that big.
listed.
It's
Okay,
not
it's not
that
even
big.
that.
It's
Okay.
smaller. It is smaller than a magnesium pill. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So even for the men, it doesn't need a stitch. And so you don't feel the procedure. It feels a little sore the next
Yeah.
day, couple, few days, depends. But usually people feel just fine. And then you've got the little pellets and they develop their own little blood supply. And it's very physiologic because it releases the hormone out to the body as
Mm-hmm.
the blood flows by. So it's not like a
Interesting.
shot, which
Right.
puts the big
Yep.
dose up and then drops off. So it's very steady. So women typically can go 3 or 4 months
Oh,
in
nice.
between. Yeah. And I can get estrogen and testosterone. My women who are not in menopause yet, they can feel so good with only testosterone, right? Because their ovaries, they're not in menopause. They're still making
Mm-hmm.
some estrogen. And then men can go up to 6 months.
Okay.
So they can be 2 times a year, and then that's the only times they have to think about their testosterone. So it's a delivery method. It's
Yeah.
another delivery method that I personally really really like. It's very physiologic. It's very smooth. It doesn't drop off a cliff at the end of those few months. It's just like, oh yeah, time for pellets, and then you come back in. So it's
Well,
it's
this
an
has been
alternative that I like.
very educational. Tell people where they can find more of you. Because you have the Miracle of Menopause Network. Like, what is that? Where can people like get more information about you and what you're doing?
Absolutely. The very best place is my website. My website is drlizmd.com, drlizmd.com. And that has all kinds of resources. It's got information, the Miracle of Menopause online community. I'm very excited about. Anna, this nutritionist colleague, and I are working on that to launch that soon. So we're very, very excited about that. People can sign up for my newsletter. I do not bombard people with emails. I just send information out from time to time. I respond to articles, headlines, try to really keep people with latest cutting edge information with that. And there's my blogs, all kinds of information. My website's always a great place to start. People can ask me questions, reach out, uh, that whatever they need. I'm here
Awesome.
to help.
All right. Well, we will definitely have the link to your website below. Thank you so much for answering all
Yeah.
of my weird and some of them were probably a little like, okay, well, that's a weird question. I don't know how to, but like, welcome to the show. I
No such
appreciate it.
thing. No, I don't think so. I really enjoyed it. I also have a free book
Oh,
that
excellent.
people that we'll make sure you have the link for the show notes.
Okay. Excellent. That sounds
Yeah,
awesome. What is the book?
wonderful. It is my most recent book. The Miracle of Menopause book is coming, but the most recent book that is out is called Go for Great: Dr. Liz's Guide to Thrive at Every Age.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're gonna be the next is it Suzanne Summerfield? Is it wasn't she
Suzanne Summers, I
Summers,
got to
yes.
meet her. I got to meet her multiple times, and I
You're gonna
miss
be the
her. She
next
was a pioneer.
you're gonna be the next, so all right, Dr. Liz, thank you so much for your time. She Slayers will
Thank
have those
you.
links for you below. If all of a sudden I seem less bitchy in a year, you know my secret, I got on pellets. Less sassy on stage. Until next week, bye.